You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Welcome to the podcast. All right, we have an awesome guest on. Today we have Chris Cookson, the head of the writers department from InkTip. Chris, thanks for being on today.
Thanks so much, Jeff, for inviting InkTip on to your podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, no, happy to. So we like to kind of reach out and find any avenue we can for screenwriters to find success. And I know that InkTip is a little bit of a legend as far as the indie screenwriter goes. So I want to kind of get into that. But first, I'd like to hear a little bit about your origin story, what brought you into writing, how you ended up at InkTip.
I've been a writer for a while.
Cool.
I studied radio, television, and film in college. And so then I graduated without a job. So I just moved to LA because it seemed like the thing to do.
Right.
So I worked in the industry in production for a long while. I was kind of heading the track of being production manager, AD, and it wasn't for me. I always loved writing.
Right.
I wanted to get more involved in the development side. And I ended up coming upon InkTip. And I actually started off with InkTip in the producers department, heading up the producer side. And then after a couple of years, I switched over and I've been heading up the writer side for many, many years. And I just love working with writers, being a writer myself, and seeing people's dreams come true is really awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, we need warriors like you fighting for the everyday screenwriter. And I think it's fantastic. You're doing some selfless work there. So this is good. This segues us into InkTip. So I know that you guys have, I want to say it's like over 1,000 scripts have been optioned or produced, something like that.
We've had over 400 films made from scripts and writers found on InkTip. Wow. And I have no idea how many options. I mean, obviously far more options because not everything optioned, unfortunately, gets
right. Gets reported even. And do you find that as the time goes on, you're seeing more and more kind of hits happening with scripts getting picked up or, getting in front of producers?
What I personally notice is an interesting cycle of genres.
Interesting.
That kind of happen with the market. So when I first was at InkTip, horrors and thrillers are always going to do great on our site.
Good.
They're, for the most part, can be done fairly low budget. We cater to the indie filmmakers and the indie market. And so those tend to always do well. However, I will see these cycles where all of a sudden, for a while, it's like a girl and her horse script, like these girl and horse movies are getting produced. And all of a sudden we have 5 girl and horse movies, or the faith-based will become cyclical and come around every now and then when we'll get certain filmmakers needing faith-based script. And then always Hallmark and Lifetime are those type of scripts. Are very
I have seen the Lifetime buzz happen on InkTip a couple of times. Yeah, it's interesting. So do you think, how would a writer try and take advantage of these kind of waxes and wanes of genre popularity? Should they be looking at the trades, or is there any kind of a way they can kind of get a feel for it so they can hop on the bandwagon when it's going?
That is an excellent question. And it's so hard for a writer to do because yes, you should look at the trades and know what's hot. But honestly, by the time it's hot, it's going to be over.
Okay.
So
it's like anything. You want to try and get ahead of the curve a little bit.
You do want to get ahead of the curve. And it's a little bit of a guessing game.
Yeah.
I was at a panel once. I was in the audience and one of the gentlemen on the panel who is a screenwriter was talking about how zombies are over. The next big thing are mermaids. Like, watch out. Mermaids are
Right.
going to be popping up everywhere. And
Yeah.
there was quite a few years ago. So I'm like, okay, are the mermaids going to happen or not? Like, I'm still waiting to see if he was right.
It was like 2 films and that was it. It was over pretty quick. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I don't think he had he had his finger on the pulse for a lot of things, but not the mermaids.
Yeah, I think potentially the trades are good if you're starting to see a trend happen. But yeah, typically with these types of things, the trend was 2 years ago, right? And then they start to get produced. And so by the time the films are produced, the trend is almost on the way out. That's kind of what happens. So it's tough to kind of get your finger on the pulse. It takes a lot of research and a little bit of guess game. I hate to say it, it's almost like the stock market. It's almost like trying to predict which stock is going to go up, which stock is going to go down, the same with genre. Right now, I'm going to go on the record as saying I think slapstick comedies are on the way back. I think right now you're going to see a lot of that stuff. Some musicals, I think those are all coming back personally. But we'll see now if we can get a slapstick mermaid musical going. I think we're going to be solid.
I think that's golden. I think that's your next Oscar. In addition to what you're asking, as far as like, what should a writer do?
Yeah.
Regarding keeping ahead of the times, honestly, they always say write what you know.
Okay.
Which is true. And also, if you can, have a few different scripts in your back pocket.
Yeah.
So if you are a writer who tends to write primarily horror, study up on maybe some of the comedy. See if you try your hand at a comedy script.
Yeah.
If you have your huge epic fantasy tentpole script, that's awesome. That's not going to get your foot in the door.
Right.
Try writing a limited location. See what you can do to have a few different genres, a few different styles. Not only will that show that you're a diverse writer, but it'll also help you be able to market yourself to different types of filmmakers. So you've just opened more doors for yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't limit yourself.
So I think that's good. I always preach, write outside of what genre you're comfortable with. And I always think it's a great way to make you a better writer. And it sounds like for InkTip, it's good to have those extra scripts in your back pocket just in case something catches on fire. So would you say that the subgenre niche of contained is steadily popular in InkTip?
Yes, and I would say due to the pandemic, even more so.
Even more so.
Because you can't do multiple locations, huge cast and crew right now.
Right.
The productions that are going forward are the ones that are smaller, more contained, can quarantine a small crew and cast and roll with it.
Perfect. So if we get like a contained thriller, a contained horror, sci-fi, sounds like those are all genres that are already somewhat regularly popular in InkTip, and if we can get like a quality script on that, right, something well written, throwing that on InkTip, it can at least increase your chances, and I think that's good for our listeners to know.
Absolutely. And think about it from a producer standpoint.
Yeah.
If you have a limited budget and you've got a few different scripts to choose from, but you've got a great script that's contained and it takes place, say, all in a hotel room, you've suddenly freed up so much of your budget because now you don't have to spend time and money on multiple locations. So it helps, as from a producing standpoint, it helps also grow your budget so you can put more money towards other aspects of the production.
I think it's a great idea. And I think, if I was going to be going on to InkTip to do something, like I would create something from scratch specifically designed to grab some heat on InkTip for that. I would design that script. Can you write the script that's burning in your soul and needs to be written? Of course, write that script. But eventually, as a writer, you're going to be getting paid gigs. You're going to have parameters, which then you have to write. And I think writing something like that, forcing yourself to do it, putting it on InkTip is a great way to prepare yourself to be in the business. So I think it's good to know what kind of sandbox you should be playing in, especially with InkTip. So I want to ask you, I mean, obviously features are popular, but, can people put TV pilots on there? Are shorts a thing on InkTip?
Yes. Yes to all of those. Shorts, we actually have quite a bit of success with shorts.
Oh, interesting.
We don't advertise it quite as much as we do, obviously, the features and TV scripts. But to place a log line for a short on InkTip is free.
Nice.
Charge for that because, to be honest, writers don't really get paid for features. It's the experience. It's the, hoping that it gets to a festival,
credit,
name recognition. Yeah. Exactly. So yes, you can market a short on InkTip. We do have TV scripts on InkTip as well. And we have had some TV scripts picked up. We've had writers who have actually been staffed on some shows. We recently it was featured on our April magazine cover. Fifth Ward, the producer director, Greg Carter, he actually found 3 of the writers who ended up being in the writer's room for that TV show that he did on InkTip. He worked with them on features that they had, and he loved working with them so much he pulled them into the writer's room. So
so he really probably worked with them on spec, right? Found spec scripts and then brought them in. That is so cool. That's not something that you would ever expect to happen. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
With television or shorts, is it the same type of genres that writers should be looking at? Should they be looking at horror? Should they be looking at fewer locations, or do you see more comedy popular with television, anything like that?
That's a great question. As far as TV goes, I'm not really sure which genres tend to track better than others. So yeah, I honestly, you've stumped me on that one because
I'm not trying to stump you. These are earnest questions. I don't do the gotcha thing. Do you find with TV pilots that you would see multicam over single cam? I just like our listeners to kind of know where they could be focusing their efforts in order to really maximize their chances of success.
Well, writers tend to post both. We get a lot of 30-minute and a lot of hour pilots.
Okay.
So both are on there, and also a lot of MOWs.
Right. Movies of the week?
Yes. Yeah. Movies of the week.
Yeah.
If you can only post one script on InkTip and you have a feature or you have a TV script, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Your feature.
Put the feature.
We have more filmmakers looking for features than we do TV scripts. So features will always get a bit more activity than the TV scripts will. It's also really hard to break into television in this industry. Not that film is super easy,
right?
But I almost feel like TV is even more cutthroat than film.
I could agree with that. Well, it tends to be more of a who you know type of game with television, even more so than features. I mean, features it's all networking, but I mean, getting on TV, that's tough, and it tends to be working your contacts to really land that gig. And even then, it's still, like you said, it's still cutthroat because you're competing with a dozen other great writers. No, that's good. One thing I wanted to say is that, in my opinion, and you can chime in it, please, I feel that the multicam is on the way out. I think the Big Bang Theory was probably the swan song of that genre. I just don't see it coming back and really taking off anymore, because it's to me, it's just old school.
I haven't watched a multicam sitcom since How I Met Your Mother went off the air.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's my answer.
There you go. I mean, the whole canned laughter thing, it's just it's two or three generations ago, and I just think nowadays audiences are more educated. They're more into story. They're more into sophisticated and developed characters, and I think the situational comedies are I think the audience has evolved past them, but this is my opinion. So that's my 2 cents. If you're submitting a TV pilot to InkTip, maybe if it is a multicam, it better be the best damn multicam script ever written. So
also, I'd say take a look at what's growing right now. It's all the
Yeah.
streaming services and the TV shows that are going up on streaming. They're
Yeah.
really not 3-camera anymore.
No.
And I feel like there was a shift a few years back where all of a sudden, the film industry was kind of taking a dive in quality, and all of a sudden all the stars that you would never think would ever do TV were popping up on Netflix shows and Amazon shows, Hulu, and all of a sudden TV, the streaming, some of the shows on the streaming systems right now just are blowing everybody out of the water.
It is. It's something like a new golden age or a new silver age of television, and going more into serials. And they're even starting to get out of procedurals now. I mean, we're starting to grow out of that, which is really interesting to see. That's why you see so many procedurals are getting canceled at mid-season. So it's fascinating. All right. So InkTip, got to refocus. All right. So this is what happens when two writers get together. We start chatting. We're like, oh, another person that knows what I know. Okay, so what other we've already provided pretty good tips here, I feel, but do you have anything else off the top of your head that you feel help writers really take advantage of that platform?
Absolutely. And everybody's going to hate me for saying this.
This podcast is brought to you by thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com, where you can find instructional videos, blogs, books, and even screenplays from the biggest films in Hollywood, all available for you to download. Visit thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com now and receive a copy of the Guide for Every Screenwriter absolutely free. Yes, free. Just visit thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com. Now, back to our show.
You have to know how to write a logline.
Okay.
You can't get around it. The industry is built on pitching, whether you're standing in an elevator doing your elevator pitch, or whether you're on InkTip trying to grab the attention of a filmmaker who is sitting there scrolling through a computer screen.
Interesting.
Know how to write a logline. 60 words or less. Don't use cliches. Don't use vague language.
Right.
Focus on the plot and your protagonist and your antagonist, and just get it down, because loglines are so important.
I mean, how far do you like to go with a 1 sentence max, 2 sentences?
That really, I feel like, depends on your script.
Okay.
If you're doing like a high concept comedy, yeah, you could get away with one line. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's something a little more in depth, maybe like a period piece, you could go longer. But
very good.
Understanding how to write a logline, and it's so hard. And writing a synopsis, so many, I think more writers fail from the jump from a logline to a synopsis, because suddenly the producer gets into reading the synopsis and it's just like, I'm tired, because synopses are so hard to write.
It is.
I'm a writer and I absolutely hate writing them. I understand.
So a lot of writers will kind of feel the synopsis as an afterthought, and they'll treat it as such. They just got to get it down, but they need to understand it is like one of the bigger sales documents that you could use for your script. And then nailing that log line is hard. I mean, how do you take a 90 to 100 page script, throw it into one line, right? It sounds impossible, but if you can nail it, it really will open up opportunity for you. So once you get that down, and it's like learning a new art, just like writing a killer synopsis is like learning a whole new way of writing. And it is, but that is part of what being a screenwriter is. Being a screenwriter isn't just writing the script. It's so much more than that. I mean, it's the logline, it's the synopsis, it's the treatment,
it's we have understanding the business.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
Like, as writers, we love to just be wrapped up in our story, and some of us are introverted by nature, but you have to understand the business. Like you said earlier, you have to network, which I get hives when I think about it. You have to understand that it's a business. You're going to be working with people. It's a collaborative art. It's not an art form where it's just you painting a picture and hanging it up in a museum. It is very collaborative. So understand The writers, when I speak to filmmakers on InkTip who have worked with writers, the most important thing, or one of the things they say over and over again, is they love writers who they can work with,
Yep.
who can take notes and run with it. If you're going to be tied to your script and not be able to make any sort of revision, it's going to be a lot harder for you.
Well, you're dead in the water. I mean, at that point, you might as well just be making it on your own. That mentality of this is it, and no one's going to tell me anything else. I mean, that writer needs to understand that this. I almost hate to say it this way, Chris, but it's almost like your script is a living document at that point. I mean, it has to change. It has to grow. You know, it's not like a Monet, like you said, where you hang it up there and then Monet sells that painting to somebody and they say, well, could you change this guy a little bit? I don't like the color of him. You know, that it didn't happen that way. Usually people bought it, they walked away. Well, with the script, you know, everybody who touches this thing's going to have notes and you're going to be rewriting it several times. And you have to be okay with that and get your mind wrapped around the fact that once this thing is optioned, you're not done. You know, you're just getting started. I consider my scripts that get optioned, I consider that draft 1 because there's a lot more to come. Well, that's great tips.
If you're going to write in a genre, really study that genre. So like you mentioned, if you write horror, try comedy, but learn comedy. Horror has its tropes for a reason.
Yeah.
So you can't break them until you understand them.
Yep.
And as far as writing loglines go, a producer or a filmmaker should be able to read your logline and know the genre from the logline without being told it. So if you're writing, there are too many times I have read a logline that I've thought, oh, this is an interesting comedy, and realized, no, it's not. It's a thriller.
Oh,
that's a problem.
That's that. Yeah, the tone should definitely reflect in the logline. 100%. And same with the synopsis. If you're writing a synopsis, we should know what kind of script it is based on how the synopsis is written. It's very true. Very true.
And then one of the other comments that one of my coworkers said was that if you're going to be a writer, you also have to be a reader. So even when it comes to films, not only do you have to watch them, but it's important to read as well. Read scripts, read books, you know.
Right. Good scripts.
Yes.
I got to throw that in.
Because I also feel you can learn so much from reading a bad script.
Okay. I'm going to give it to you. You can. As long as you're at the level that you know what a bad script is, I'll give it to you. But if you're just starting out and you don't know a good script from a bad script, I'm gonna start praying for you. My thoughts and prayers are with you. No, definitely reading good scripts, reading scripts from the masters. I'm actually glad you pointed it out because our website, thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com, we have an entire page of scripts that you can read from the masters, from contained to sci-fi to drama to TV pilots, and you can read them all for free. So I think that's great. You could definitely go and research in the genre that you want to write to see what they're doing. And I don't know about you, Chris, but you know, I love to just steal from the masters, little tips and tricks I see. I like to take them, put them in my toolbox and save them for later because that's part of what we do. Let's talk about the InkTip Magazine because I heard some news that we're finding out that the InkTip Magazine is being suspended. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, we are gearing up for not necessarily a relaunch, but we are really delving deep into what we can do to grow InkTip and make it more valuable for both writers and filmmakers. And we had a long talk and decided that with all of our energies focusing on the future and on our preferred newsletter and our script listings and networking, that the magazine didn't have a spot in there anymore.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's always been kind of my baby. I've been the editor of the magazine for years and years.
Aww.
But it takes a lot of people in a lot of departments to pull it all together. Right. And with all of our energies spent really focusing on the other aspects of the site, we decided we need to put this on hold for a while. The December issue right now will be our final issue, but in my back of my mind, I have my fingers crossed that maybe we can bring it back in the future in certain ways, but we'll see.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, every business evolves, right? We're in the
Yes.
digital age, and I'm sure you guys are figuring out ways to bring InkTip to more people and increase chances of screenwriters getting out there. I mean, that's kind of your creed. So hopefully that keeps going on, and I look forward to seeing where the business evolves and is breaking a new territory. So, I mean, I like InkTip. I think it's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. So
We like it too.
yeah, considering. Is there anything else going on with InkTip that we can keep an eye out for?
We're expanding. We're hiring more people in various departments and really making a push to try to grow and embrace the indie market. And what we've always done well is connecting writers with filmmakers.
I think expanding into the indie market is, for personally, I think it's the right decision, because with all of these theaters closing because of COVID, and who knows what will open up, who knows what kind of theater battle there's going to be in the future trying to survive this thing, or if we're just going to be if streaming is the new future. People are worried that the indie scene is going to suffer, but I'm not that worried, because it's survived ever since filmmaking started. No, at no point in filmmaking history has people said, we're just not going to make indie films for the next 30 years. It never happened. It's always adapted. It's always evolved. It's always found its platform. Yes, there will be periods of bonanzas where it really takes off, and then periods where it's dry, but it's always there. And so I think indie film has a strong future. And I'm glad to see that InkTip is embracing it.
And I have one more tip.
Oh, let's hit it.
All right. So one thing I would say is, as far as we talked on, if you're a writer, try to have different genres, because that opens up doors for you as far as filmmakers. Also, if we're talking about specifically with how writers can leverage InkTip, if you post more than one listing, you are getting more exposure on the site, because filmmakers, if they can actually see if you are a writer with more than one script, and you can go to just your platform on InkTip and see all the stuff you have listed. So go ahead.
So does that mean the algorithm favors you, and so you populate more, or does that mean...
It's not that the algorithm necessarily favors you. So if you have more scripts on the site, the probability of you coming up in various searches is greater.
Oh, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So upload some good scripts to InkTip. If you got 2 or 3 of them, there you go. Start. And
the preferred newsletter that we offer writers, that's the newsletter that comes with very specific script requests that
yes.
So if you have more than one script in your flash drive, then that's a great way you can use the newsletter, because it doesn't matter if you have it on the site or not.
And with the newsletter, do you have to be a member in order to submit to the newsletter, or how does that work?
There are different tiers.
Okay.
So if you just have the free InkTip writer account, you get our free newsletter, which means the first 2 script requests in the newsletter each week you can submit to without any charge.
Great.
They're just freebies.
Yeah.
If you are the preferred newsletter subscriber, then yes, you are paying for that service, and you are getting way more than 2 script requests a week. It's between like 6 or 8. I think this week it was something insane like 14.
Okay.
So that's 14 filmmakers who said, we need scripts this week that you can submit to.
And so if somebody takes advantage of that when they see that preferred newsletter, I'm assuming it's better to be one of the first ones in to submit to that, because my assumption is that these filmmakers get overwhelmed with writers submitting work. So probably not something that you want to put off. If you get that newsletter, you probably want to clip through it real fast and see if there's anything that you qualify you could submit to. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. And also not every script request that's in a preferred newsletter will trickle down into the free newsletter, because sometimes a filmmaker finds what he needs.
Yeah. So it sounds like, be proactive. Sounds like it's the better approach for that. Very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was awesome. Really kind of getting into the know-how of InkTip and figuring out really ways for our writers to take advantage of the platform. Well, I really wanted to tell you, Chris, I appreciate you coming on this show. I really do appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it too.
The knowledge you've brought to us today, you are an excellent resource and incredibly friendly and not as introverted as I think you are.
I'm 50-50 IE. I took the test back in high school. So you never know who you're going to get.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, tell the introverted Chris hello for me.
Will do.
Well, you have a good one.
You too. Take care. Thank you so much, Jeff. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.